What's going on, everyone? Keegs here, and so is Ben, and we are going to be talking today about Andor. It's been a while since the second season has concluded, and I feel like it's a good time to talk about it since literally nothing else in the Star Wars universe is happening right now. So say hi, Ben, and just introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Ben.
Very good. Starting off, I just wanted to say that I thought that this second season of Andor was really good. I really liked directorially how it was framed, and it was kind of a subset of the Star Wars universe that I think is touched on a little bit less, and that's kind of the espionage portion of it. But I know that you have some differing opinions, and not to say that you don't think it was good, but I know that there were faults that you had with the show. So just let me know what you think, Ben, of season 1 and 2 and kind of Andor as a whole in the Star Wars universe.
I think obviously it's very well made. I think that's pretty undeniable. It looks really good. It's one of the few shows that is insanely expensive that actually looks really expensive.
Yeah.
It's I think as close to movie quality as we've gotten.
Yeah. No, I 100%
on
agree.
TV. Maybe among any show. Like I don't even think it just looks good for Star Wars. I think it looks good across the board.
I agree.
That being said, and I want to be really clear that this is a good show. I think season 1 is really slow, and I don't think it's slow in it's a slow burn. I think there are kind of like two sides of that argument that people like to take, or it's like, oh, there's just not enough action and lightsabers for you. And then the other side of it likes to say, no, it's just really insanely slow, and it sucks because it's slow, and it's like, I don't feel like that's it. I do feel like it was slow enough that it wasn't about the fact that it was. I feel like slow burn is not what I would describe it. I would say it had a pacing problem.
In season 2 as well?
Season 1 only.
Okay.
I actually felt like season 2 was really well paced.
Sure.
And it's funny because I've heard people say that they wish the show got its full 5 seasons or however many that they were intending to have.
I could see people feeling like it was a little rushed in season 2 just because there were pretty massive time jumps. It was almost like you were watching essentially 3 different arcs happen through that second season, right?
You are. But I think that's why the pacing worked for me better, and a lot better actually in season 2.
Yeah.
It's because I like slowness and I like to sit with the characters, but sometimes it felt like what was happening on screen wasn't interesting enough to me.
Yeah, but season 2, I think, and maybe you agree with this, they cut out a lot of that filler sitting with the characters because they were jumping through essentially 3 arcs in one season. So to me, it didn't feel like there was hardly any filler in season 2.
Yeah, I don't even think I wouldn't even characterize the slowness in season 1 as filler. I mean, I think it was a deliberate choice.
Sure.
That wasn't born of
sure.
a production concern or something like filler usually is.
Sure, not in the anime sense of filler, but in the sense of sitting with the characters and dragging out different conversations and scenes for a dramatic effect, whereas it just ultimately felt a little slow for you in season 1. And I can't argue that. I agree. I think season 2, for me, was exponentially better than season 1. And I really enjoyed season 1, but season 2, it felt like bang, bang, bang. Things were happening every episode pretty much, and to me it drew me into every episode to see what happened, and when major catastrophe happens at the end of one episode and to see how they resolve it in the next episode. And sometimes there were time skips that pushed ahead a little further than I thought that they actually might, and you're looking at the aftermath and not maybe the immediate repercussions.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that too. It kind of felt more like a TV episode in that way for this season, where an episode had kind of an arc of itself that played into the larger arc. That was the way that they did it, whereas season 1 felt very deliberate and slow. But maybe slow isn't even really the criticism I have. Maybe it's just that
it's methodical.
I mean, maybe the pacing of season 1 didn't work for me because I didn't feel like the payoff was worth it. And maybe that's ultimately what the problem was for me. I'm not even going to sit here and be like, this is an objective flaw or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just for you, it felt a little less than.
We can get into this later, but I think the way that people discuss this show has a coloring effect for me on my experience with it that is not fair to the show at all, because it's not its fault. Just that people have decided to be as insufferable as possible in both directions. I've seen a lot of insane takes from people who don't like it and from people who do. And I just wish people would understand and respect that this is going for a different thing than what Star Wars goes for usually, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. This is more mature than Star Wars usually is, but that doesn't mean that the other things are of lesser value.
Yeah. I think especially this show, because it was so well made and such high quality, the acting is, I think, top notch in all of the Star Wars universe. It gives some people a little bit more mind to say, like, hey, this is what Star Wars should be, and that's like they're taking the wrong lesson away from it. Yes, I am always here for actors that make you feel a certain way, and the story and the directing that makes you feel a certain way and show you aspects of the universe. But you can do that with other Star Wars material. It doesn't have to be like a boots to the ground. Like, the story isn't, I feel like, the key here. It's the people that are saying that this is better than some other Star Wars properties are really just taking the fact that it's well produced and not necessarily the exact story that it's telling.
Yeah, I mean, there is an episode in Andor that's like, oh, wow, this one got less budget.
Sure.
And it also has, I think, maybe the highest or the second highest budget of any of the Star Wars shows. So, like, I mean,
yeah, but
it doesn't
I've
just come down
many,
to the talent that's on
Marvel properties and Star Wars properties and any other franchise you want to talk about. Like, I've seen massive budgets that lead to literally no benefit. Like, they could have done it on half the budget. Whereas I feel like the budget was used very appropriately here, and you could feel the effects of it.
Right. Yeah. I agree with all of that. Yeah, it's just, I wish people could talk about it in a way that wasn't so irritating. But that's kind of a larger symptom of how people engage with Star Wars online. It's not just Andor.
Take, for example, Kenobi. If that had been produced and directed at the same level as Andor, it would have been, in my opinion, exponentially better, because the history of those two characters, like, not just exponentially better than itself, but better than even Andor, because there is a history and a backstory between those characters that all of the audience is aware of and is tracking. And if they could have delivered those same emotional beats that Andor did for Cassian and the Rebellion and all of that, like, if they could have done that with Kenobi and Vader, I think that would have landed even more significantly than anything in Andor. It just so happens that, I don't know if the budget was the issue or the directing or, you know, corporate meddling in the artistic vision. I don't know what it was exactly that derailed like certain elements of that show that didn't bring it to this level of production. But I do think that a situation like this with Andor, if it had been carried through to a show like Kenobi, that show would have been absolutely insane and probably one of the best pieces of media, in my opinion, if you brought that same level of production. And, like, I don't think it's the actors, because I think that Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen could deliver had they been given the right source material, and I just don't think it carried through.
I think it really came down to the production, because I don't really have an issue with the story or the dialogue of Kenobi. I mean, there are certain story choices that I don't like, but...
Yeah. And, like, I don't
really have a problem with the dialogue. I think
it should have been a little bit more mature. And I say that not in a way to say that kids shouldn't be watching it, because they absolutely should. And I think at the end of the day, yes, maybe this is a kid's show, but you can still make mature decisions in a children's show. And you don't have to make silly, wacky decisions just because you're trying to market it more towards a younger audience than, say, Andor was. Because Andor was, in my opinion, very clearly marketing towards an adult audience. And I think that's why it's garnered a lot of love and appreciation, especially online, because that is mostly adults talking in, you know, echo chambers there. But when you're marketing towards kids, they're not in those kind of echo chambers or those forums or those different pieces of media to engage with. And I think because maybe studios think that, oh, it's just a kid show, just do this, whatever, it's fine, or there's a plot hole, it doesn't matter. And I think that showed through a few times in Kenobi. Like, I think very namely,
there's some contrivances in Kenobi that are very silly.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't think that's necessarily an effort to make it more palatable to kids, though. I think Kenobi is, my personal opinion is that it's strictly a victim of its budget, and it's I know that the director for it was brought on like
I'll give
some
you that
portion of the way
if
through
you're saying
pre-production.
that the writers being worse is a restriction of the budget, because I don't think any budget really has. Why would you put like a kid in a trench coat?
Yeah, so what I'm saying though is that those types of decisions aren't always a result of like the writers not knowing that that's goofy. It can be a production constraint or a timing constraint. First of all, a lot of Kenobi was filmed during COVID, so that made things more difficult.
Yeah.
But secondly, I believe it had a budget of around 90 million, which is 3 times less than each season of Andor. And that if the pre-production was stilted or rushed in any way, those are the kind of contrivance decisions that you make. I don't think storytelling decisions like that happen a lot through incompetence. Like, I think people know, like, that's silly. I bet the writer would tell you that. I think that sort of thing happens because of constrained pre-production. I think Deborah Chow, the director for it, has said some things that kind of hint towards there being some issues there.
Sure.
And like just the production of the value of the show overall was way lower. And it's kind of ridiculous because Kenobi is like a marquee.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a studio decision because they're like, oh, it's Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is going to sell regardless of whatever budget we give it. And whereas a lesser known property, they might be like, oh, we actually need to think about this and do it correctly, because if we don't, for sure nobody's going to watch it. But even if we put out a shit product or a subpar product or mediocre or whatever, people are going to watch it because it's Obi-Wan and Vader, which is true.
Though
unfortunately,
I don't think Obi-Wan was shit though. I'd give it like a B-.
I don't think so either, but I think it could have been great, and that's what
I do agree with that.
Like pains me. I'm like, I don't think it was as bad as a lot of people think it was. I think there were a couple scenes that I'm like, I have to suspend disbelief for this because it's dumb, and I'll do that. That's fine. But like, I could see the potential of that show and the greatness of that versus what we actually got of the B- mediocrity. Like, that is what is hard to reconcile for me personally, where I'm like, this could have been the best thing I've ever seen in my life, and instead it was fine. So
I think it did have great moments, but it was definitely hamstrung by really bizarre decisions. And I don't think it really had a writing problem. There are weird contrivances, like, you know, people getting stabbed in the chest or the stomach like 3 times.
Yeah.
The trench coat thing.
Yeah.
But I think some of it was also people kind of operating not in good faith, engaging with it. And I think that was largely a result of just like the production value wasn't up to snuff. And I think when the production value looks bad, it's very hard to engage with something properly. Like, yeah, how many like films or television series do you know that are like, man, this is super flawless and well written, but you know, the production value is just bad. It's like people usually aren't able to engage with what's there because it doesn't look like the way that it should.
Yeah.
All I have to say is
I agree.
Andor is, I think, the best looking show, but I also think how it looks does affect people's perception of it in that way too.
Yeah. And because you're saying because it looks had a lot
more time to breathe.
Yeah, I do want to focus on Andor here.
Yes.
But essentially, in season 2, because we're following 3 arcs, it's kind of all hinges on Gorman, right? Like that's the main catalyst for everything that's happening in season 2. The beginning starts off with them doing some little missions and things, and they go to find Bix, and she's like on a farm or whatever. But I feel like this season really takes off after he finds Bix. They go back to, I think, Yavin 4, and they're hanging out there before Cassian is called back to go do like one last mission to Gorman.
Yeah, I agree. That's when it really does kick off, and some of the episodes later have some of my favorite Star Wars moments in them.
Yeah, I think personally, one of the things that really stands out for me in Andor is the level of emotion this show made me feel for some random ass planet that like you've never heard of before. And I mean, it's not like in the Outer Rim or anything. It's a core world, I'm pretty sure, but it is one of those like lesser known planets that they developed a full backstory for in I think one episode, talking about the history and the silk production and everything, and like the economy, and showing the people, and you get to meet a lot of these people from the world, and you can see how they don't understand everything that's going on, and like as things slowly start to escalate. And to me, it does such a great job of showing how like a small occupation can turn into like a full-blown invasion or a takeover. And by the end of it, you've already sunk so deep. There's no going back at that point and saying, oh, actually, we don't want the Empire to be here, because at first it was like small things, and you could see them how they slowly took more and more control until by the end they had complete control of everything there, and it was too late for everyone. The rebellion that had started to build in Gorman was probably years too late. They thought they had a lot more time. They didn't realize the control of the planet that they were losing at the time. They saw like these little inches and steps forward and little incursions by the Empire. And they were like, if this gets any worse, we're going to have to step up. But like they started asking those kinds of questions by the time that they had no control left over Gorman.
And it was really interesting the way that it was all handled. It was very slow and deliberate, but not slow in the way that I was using slow to describe season 1. It was very like calculated, and I find the whole thing surrounding it very interesting. So I mean, Gorman and like the massacre of Gorman is in Legends. I don't know how much this differs from its Legends counterpart, so that helped a little bit, but most people probably don't know that story.
Sure.
I mean, I consider us both fairly entrenched Star Wars fans, and I don't think either of us really know much about that. And the way that the Empire was trying to basically create pretext for them to fully take over and seize like their resources and things like that. But then, they started protesting just peacefully, like singing and whatnot. And then once the Empire realized that they weren't going to like basically fall for their trap, they set up the pretext anyway, killed one of their own guys or shot one of their own guys and created a riot. And I think that's a really interesting look into how kind of like authoritarian governments operate, an empire operates, because it doesn't even need you to fall into their traps. They'll create pretext even if there isn't any. And that's why the way that the Gormans resisted probably didn't matter. Like if they were, I mean, it mattered in the sense that like being peaceful didn't get them any extra points.
Yeah.
In fact, waiting so long to be violent might have hurt them. And I'm not saying advocating for violence or anything. I'm just saying like in this instance, it didn't matter what they did. The Empire was going to do what they were going to do anyway.
You can't know if peace works until you try it. And they tried it and it didn't work. But unfortunately, because they didn't try anything else, it was too late by the time that their peaceful protests had stopped.
Honestly, even if they had tried sooner, if the Empire really wanted to because the Empire was trying to create a scenario that still made them look good to the rest of the galaxy, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
They didn't want it to be viewed as them crushing a planet of people. I mean, you saw that the way the propaganda was spun too, and I like that they put emphasis on that.
Yep.
It was really interesting because you see that in real life too, all the time, and how you can end up rooting for the people that are doing the harm is pretty crazy in the way that narratives are spun.
Yeah.
And the way that people engage with that information.
I think the way they did the propaganda push, or whatever you want to call it, it was incredible because it was so slow, and like the seeds were planted at a bunch of different times throughout the years. It wasn't one, oh, hey, they did this, let's go invade or whatever. It was, hey, let's say that they're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then a year later, oh, there's a little more rebellion. Oh, they're actually lying about the quality of their stuff. Oh, there's blah, blah, blah. It was a systematic effort to bring down this entire civilization by planting these seeds at time periods later. So like you're looking at years and months and very long, elaborate ruse to get people to start believing this as you start planting seeds. So it wasn't one of those things that was overnight. And I thought it was so unsettling to see that happen on screen to me, where you're like, this could happen to any civilization, where if you're going to spread this information and play this long con of years in the making, people will believe anything, because sure, you're going to say, oh, Gorman is doing this thing wrong, and 95% of people are going to be like, nah, you're crazy. 5% will be like, oh yeah, maybe. And then let's say 6 months later, you say something else. Oh, okay, now you've got like 90% of the population that's like, nah, no way. But another 5 is like, oh, well, supposedly they did something back then. Now they're doing something again. Like, let me flip over. And you just keep saying these every month, couple months, you say something new, leak a little more information. You slowly start to win over the general public's opinion, where every time you'll get a few more percent of the general public to be like, well, they have had a string of records now, and it hasn't just been one thing, and it's been years now that we've been hearing about the quality issues in this place or whatever it is, and now all of a sudden it's 60% of the population is saying no way, but now you have 40% of the population, and soon they start to spread their information, and I think it's very quick. By the time you get a certain percent of the population to start believing it, then they start propagating it themselves, and they act as their own propaganda, and it's just exponential at that point, before all of a sudden everybody has turned, the public opinion has turned on this once peaceful, very productive planet.
Yep, and it could have been anywhere. I didn't even need to be Gorman.
No, it could have been anything.
That's why Mon Mothma's speech is so compelling, because it's like the death of truth and an objective reality is like, we can't let that happen.
Yeah, it was so vital for Mon Mothma's speech there for the galaxy, because I think a lot of the Senate at this time too felt that something wrong was happening in Gorman, but just the way the Empire operates and everything that was happening at the time, no one wanted to speak up. No one wanted to be that squeaky wheel and get replaced or taken out, because if you're just one person talking into this giant sea of the Senate and you're saying, hey, something feels wrong here, the Empire's probably going to take you out. And that level of fear between the Senate was huge, but Mon Mothma speaking up at that really was an inciting incident for anybody else that was contemplating the rebellion, I think, to switch over and end up changing their loyalty, because it really only took that one person to show any sort of backbone and stand up to the Empire to get everything like in position with the rest of the rebellion.
Yep. And I love the way that they portrayed it all, and the kind of cracks in the Empire's armor too. They talked about how like this sort of like authoritarianism requires constant effort. You have to be so tightly wound and spinning that machine, because the way that the Empire operates, they want you to deny what's in front of you, right?
Sure.
So they have to constantly spin a web of lies and crackdowns and propaganda and all this other sort of stuff. And because it requires this oiled machine to always be like, no machine works perfectly, and you just have to find areas where it's weak and then you go for it. And that's kind of what they did. So Mon Mothma had her speech, probably turned over some people. Cassian was able to go save her. And all in all, it's still sad because there's so many victims on the way to the rebellion stopping the Empire, right? But sure, it's inspiring in other ways, because there's always a path forward if enough people get together. So
yeah,
really love that part. I think Mon Mothma's speech was my favorite part of the whole show, and it's been one of my favorite Star Wars moments of all time.
No, I thought it was amazing. I thought basically every scene that Mon Mothma was on screen was fantastic. I struggle to think of a scene with her on screen that I did not enjoy.
I do wish like the whole wedding stuff and earlier in the season with her daughter, and like kind of obviously like her and her husband aren't really in love anymore, and all like that kind of interpersonal stuff sort of came back a little bit more later. I feel like it just happens and then it doesn't really come up narratively again. I think the purpose of it was probably to put them in a safe position despite her rebellion.
I think not only that, but I think it was also to show a parallel with her and Luthen, where he talks about sacrificing everything. And essentially that's what Mon Mothma had to sacrifice. She had to sacrifice her marriage. She had to sacrifice her relationships with her daughter, her attachments to her home world and her people. I think that was a very big turning point for her, of kind of realizing that she was going to have to give everything up if she wanted to truly be part of a rebellion and truly speak out against the Empire. And I think it was to mirror that she had the same dedication to the cause that Luthen did, even if they didn't get along all that frequently.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate that like thematic connection. I just wish like we don't really get into what she thinks about all of that now. I get that the story kind of becomes grander as it transitions into Rogue One and then the first Star Wars.
Yeah, but you lose sight
overall,
of the littler pictures of people's individual lives.
Makes sense to me that like Luthen would have to sacrifice himself because he had to do a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Were they on Naboo earlier in the season? Luthen and Clea. They were on Naboo, and they did that on purpose in Naboo, I assume, because that's where the Emperor is from. Bombed the
yes,
tank or whatever.
Yes. When in the flashback.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure, but I've seen other people talk about it. I didn't know if that was confirmed anywhere or they even said Naboo.
No, maybe they didn't. They said it. They said it in the show that they were on Naboo.
Okay.
And I think they mentioned
I just missed it.
Being the Emperor's home planet.
Oh, so they may have not used the word Naboo specifically, but so I just glossed over that part. That makes sense. I thought that was despite not catching it in the moment, I actually think that was a really nice touch. I really like when these movies incorporate more of the prequel trilogy, since Disney spent such a long time avoiding it.
I mean,
really well done.
They have done a pretty good job of incorporating things animated wise from the prequels, and a couple times in this show as well. I would say on the bigger scale they haven't done a great job of that, but overall I think they've been doing a decent job.
They've been doing more. I mean, they should have done more sooner instead of listening to bitter older millennials and Gen Xers. But anyway, I also thought that the new guy that they got for Bail Organa, Benjamin Bratt, was really, really good.
Yeah.
When they first announced it, I'm like, he doesn't look anything like Jim Smits. Anything else I've seen this guy in, and maybe he's in other things that would cause people to think, oh, that's a good pick. But ended up being fine. He did a really good job. I felt like he really matched the energy of how the character's already been portrayed.
Yeah.
And they look so different that I'm surprised it works so well for me. And it made me realize the problem with a lot of like, people fixate way too much on whether or not the actors look similar. Sometimes it can be so different that it's like disassociating. It's like, these are not the same person. But
yeah,
I think you get somebody who understands the role like he does, and it worked really well for me.
I think so too. And I
hope it's not a rift with Jimmy Smits though. Like I hope he's doing well health wise, or he didn't have a falling out with Lucasfilm or Disney or something. Yeah. I have no idea why he couldn't be in it.
Yeah.
Either way, his stand-in or replacement did a really good job.
No, I definitely thought so too. I'm here for actors being replaced. Honestly, I think it's good. To me, it's better than when they CGI all these old characters back in, because to me that takes me out of the moment a lot more than if you had just replaced that actor with someone else that looked close enough that I'd be like, okay, it's a different actor or actress, but I get the idea. But when they CGI it, all I can think is like the eyes don't look right.
Yeah, though I will say, like, I don't know if I felt that way until this, and I'm like, okay, the actor could look completely different and still nail exactly who the character is. Maybe it does not need to be even have to look like the same person.
I don't know. I thought like Solo was fine in the movie. That didn't take me out of the moment that he wasn't Harrison Ford. To me, I'm like, you look enough like the guy, and you're a younger version, so to me, it's pretty easy to.
He never really felt like Han to me, but I'm also, it's odd in a paradoxical way because I don't really have a strong attachment to Han Solo as a character, but
I don't either. Which
didn't
is
feel like his. Yeah, I didn't feel like his depiction in Solo felt like it lined up that well. I don't know if other people feel that way or not, but it has nothing to do with their physical appearance. I just felt like his like stature and like something about the way that he spoke and moved just didn't work that well for me. I will say though that some people disagree. I feel like people really loved it at the time. Kind of retroactive, like a little bit of revisionism, but that like Luke and Mandalorian, not Mandalorian, but Fett, like I felt like that was pretty convincing. And I think it's mostly because like the digital effects that they did were pretty subtle. They got somebody who looked a lot like Mark Hamill and just like did a little bit. The only thing that didn't work for me was the voice. I think they used like an AI voice modulator, and that kind of made the performance more flat. But other than that, I felt like that looked really good.
Boba Fett looked really good. I agree. But I think a big part of that is getting someone that looks almost exactly like Luke. I thought that.
But even that being said, it's like at this point, I'm kind of pro just recast, mostly because I don't like the way that it's very tangential. We don't need to get super into it, but I don't like the way that the industry is moving with AI trying to like not pay people and things like that. Yeah. So like,
no, I
now I'm like, you know what? I kind of was for deepfakes before, but now you've convinced me not to be. So
I've never really been for it. I'm like, just cast someone new. It's fine. But going back to Andor.
Yes. Well, it's funny because Genevieve O'Reilly also played Mon Mothma in the cut scenes from Revenge of the Sith. So yes, I also love that they just got her for that. I thought that was cool.
Also, her hair, fucking fantastic. I don't know what happened between episode 12 and Rogue One to her to go to like a fucking bowl cut, but like, girl, come on.
I think that's what she has in the original trilogy. They did that.
I know, but she looks so good in like
I agree.
The whole series.
You don't need to.
She gets to Rogue One, and you're like, who did you dirty? Like, is there no barber on fucking Yavin 4?
We don't need to do the 70s sci-fi haircuts just because it takes place in original Star Wars. We don't need to do that.
Just made me laugh.
Yeah, I hope that they carry that forward. I don't need them to be. There was that one guy, I think, in Return of the Jedi that had like the worst like comb over thing I've ever seen in my life, and I'm like, we really don't need to have characters doing that. It honestly kind of takes me out of it a little bit when I'm like, dude, like they look dumb. Like, let's not. Very petty. Something else. Oh, I wanted to talk about the end as well. Obviously, something I really loved was that Cassian has a child with Bix.
Oh yes,
he doesn't get to meet, which is really sad, but also happy. It's like bittersweet because you know his legacy gets to live on through her and their child together, and I really love that choice.
I love that he has a son. It was a little cliche, you know, like him going off or whatever, and then the cutscene of her pregnant. But I'll take it because I do like the legacy, and I would very much enjoy to see 20 years down the road what that child is now up to and doing in the world of Star Wars, because they're going to be fairly prominent at the time of the sequel trilogy. So I would think that would be room for a lot of stories, right? Because they would be like, what, 30 at that point-ish, in their 30s? Yep.
It could be if they wanted to do that. I could see them doing that with how Andor's become more popular.
Yeah, I think they'll continue the character, and if the new character is well received, then they would push it to the sequel trilogy. Though I would say Disney. Yeah, and
but it was the right amount of cheese for me. I think Star Wars has always been cheesy, but I think that's okay. Like it's very honest and forthright about what it is.
Yeah,
in that way, and it's always been written to be that. That's why like I get really frustrated when people compare like the dialogue of this to like other Star Wars material, and it's like it's just going for something different. Even the original trilogy was more or less written the same way the prequel trilogy was, same way that a lot of Star Wars shows are written, and they're going for a very like direct, sometimes hokey style. People don't necessarily talk like that, but that's okay. And for this, wanted to be more grounded, wanted to cater more to a sense that they would change that. I don't think that makes it better or worse. No, now it's better for this. It's good that they made those changes for what the show wanted to be.
Yeah,
but I don't know that I would want all of Star Wars to be this.
Yeah, as a suspenseful spy thriller, I think it needed to be grounded, and it needed to feel like the stakes were extremely high with everything they did, and I think they succeeded with that. And you couldn't do that with the kind of hokiness and corny dialogue that they had in other Star Wars properties. I think you would have lost a lot of tension if you cracked the joke at every time things got serious, and I think that works for certain properties and a lot of Star Wars actually, but I think for this show in general it needed to be serious, and you were showing the turmoil of people's lives, and it didn't really feel appropriate to crack a lot of jokes in the same manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's just in the way that the characters talk, like characters and like the dialogue is sort of at least in the first 6 movies, are sort of a supplement to the imagery, which is doing most of the legwork for telling the story.
Yeah.
And that's why the dialogue is very direct, because it's not really meant to, it doesn't play to the audience as much, and it's more of George Lucas's style is a lot more visually oriented than it is literary, and I feel like a lot of modern writing is very literary, and that's what Andor is. So just the only distinction that I'm drawing there is that literary is focusing on telling the story through how things are said, what you know, the way that characters talk to each other and stuff, whereas George really like to do visual, where it's like about the actions that are happening, the framing of the camera. If you notice in the dialogue scenes, mostly in the prequels and the first Star Wars, but it happens enough in the other ones too, where the dialogue is not actors aren't playing to the camera in those movies. They're set. It's shot as a documentary almost. And that's why even despite the dialogue being the style that it is, it still feels like real people, at least to me.
Sure.
But this is going for something different, and I think that that's okay. My point is that I don't think that's all Star Wars needs to be this. It's just a different style. And I bet he loves it. I know that George Lucas actually called Tony Gilroy after Rogue One and told him that he loved it. So I think there's room in Star Wars for this. I think it's great that we have this. I just would be sad if this is what all of it became. Not because it's bad, but because I think there's magic in Star Wars that is unique to it that this does differently and doesn't fulfill in the same way.
Yeah.
So I think it's good we get a lot of different styles and approaches.
I see what you're saying. I think, in my opinion, Star Wars is essentially a universe, and in my opinion, every type of story could be told. Like, you want a comedy? There's a comedy. There's something funny happening in the Star Wars universe out there somewhere. If you want a tragedy, there's plenty of that to go around. You want a fantasy? There's a lot of that. A sci-fi? There's a lot of that. Like, I think Star Wars has always been a property that has built this whole world, and there are so many stories to tell, and they don't have to be the same. In my opinion, you can tell all of the same kinds of stories in Star Wars with that as the background of the universe, and you have the characters and the story that you want to tell with those specific characters, and the story can just be background. It doesn't always have to be the grand, let's overthrow the Emperor plot. It can be smaller stories within the same universe, telling personal stories of personal lives.
That's why I actually quite enjoyed Skeleton Crew. Weirdly, I think maybe close to on par with this show in terms of visuals, which is kind of bizarre because it's like a silly, like, Goonies style story. Neither here nor there. Just like I think there's room to do stuff like that. Maybe like you don't need to do like huge budget stuff for the smaller stuff. That seems like not a great use of resources, but I am not a business person, so what do I know? But back to Andor, the relationship between Cyril and Dedra, really great too.
Yeah. It was so
one of my favorite parts about the season too.
I liked it. I thought it was really good, but every time I'm like, what the hell do you see in this guy? And also I'm like, what is even happening? Do they like each other? Like, I feel like they kind of do, but also you're both just using each other to get higher into the ranks of the
think they did genuinely love each other, like the way that she stands up to his mother for him. Like, I don't think that happens otherwise. I think what she admires about him is his drive despite his like kind of meager status.
Yeah.
And she offers that structure. She kind of matches his ambition, and then we kind of see him having doubts as time goes on, and then he's obviously very angry with her because he kind of realizes that she was withholding information and maybe kind of using his station for her own goals on Gorman. And I think part of him was also the Empire wasn't necessarily what he thought it was.
Yeah.
It's really easy to believe in law and order and structure when you think it's just, but if you start to see those injustices in a way that's, the cognitive dissonance is too much.
Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting to me at the end with Cyril, at the end of him, I should say, where he seemed to realize that the Empire was full of shit and full of terrible people, and he started to be disillusioned with the Empire. At that very same moment, he then still tried to kill Cassian, and to me, I thought that scene could have gone either way. It could have been a scene where he tried to defect or something of that nature, but it was, I guess, still so ingrained in him to take down Cassian that he ended up dying for that very last cause, that was such an interesting scene to me because I wasn't really sure where it was going until it was finished.
Yeah, I wasn't either. When he starts like choking her, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep.
But like, I also like, obviously that's not good, but also understood why he was so angry, and that scene was really, really compelling. But it's really interesting. I like that the whole show feels like it echoes what we see in authoritarian governments now, what we've seen them in history.
How did you feel about the way Cyril went out?
I feel like I was fine with it, but also like surprised that he died at all, to be honest. I don't know why I was surprised.
Yeah, same. To me, he died pretty early in the season. he died on episode 8, and there's 12 episodes, right? He died 2/3 of the way into the season, and he was kind of the main protagonist up until literally that episode. Or antagonist, I should say, not protagonist.
Well, he's the protagonist in the sense that we're following his POV.
Sure.
So, but he is like he wasn't doing good things.
Yeah. It just, to me, it felt like they killed a main character and that whole thread. And then Dedra, I don't even remember what ended up happening to her. Did she just...
She's in Empire prison.
Oh, right. So, she got arrested. I don't know. It felt a little unsatisfying. Both of their conclusions felt a little unsatisfying to me. And maybe that's the point. Like, it's not satisfying to be in the Empire, and it doesn't lead to satisfying conclusions. But it felt, I don't know, they had worked up these characters so much, and then they just kind of fizzled out 2/3 of the way through the season.
Yeah, though I will say, like, it's sort of a fitting consequence. Like, for his actions, though, not every character needs redemption. Like, narratively, like, I think anyone is capable. I think anyone can be. You start making good choices and things that don't hurt people. I'm pretty flexible with that. I think you kind of have to be to believe that Darth Vader can have redemption. But it is odd that the way that he gets a pretty final ending, and in the way that he does sense, he kind of dies in the chaos of all of his decisions that he's wrought.
Yeah.
But he also seemed to kind of see the consequences, whereas Dedra, I don't know, ever, like, maybe kind of starts to, but doesn't grapple with it nearly as much as he did. And then her consequences going to jail, which Empire prison's pretty bad. Maybe death would be better.
No, but, I don't disagree with that. I just think it was weird kind of weird in the way that she went to prison at all. I don't know. Like, I feel like we've seen people fuck up a lot more than she did. And
yeah, well, Krennic seems very petty.
That's true.
He was actually a lot more intimidating in the show than he was in Rogue One.
I loved Krennic in this. I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, he's really good. I was like, oh, okay.
Every time he was on screen, I felt tense.
That's something I feel like Star Wars has done pretty well for the most part.
Yeah, true.
Recently, like at least the past 15 years or so, is like the bad guys all feel like
pretty intimidating,
pretty intense. Like even like Darth Vader's been handled since the Disney acquisition.
Yeah,
not that he was handled well before too, but it was one of those things where they could so easily mess this up and they just haven't. So that's pretty impressive. And I liked Kylo Ren, even though I didn't feel like the sequels came together as a whole very well. The Empire villains in Andor are really good. Baylan and Shin in Ahsoka, Thrawn, Moff Gideon, and Mandalorian. Like, they've been doing like a pretty good job.
Yeah.
With that, and I feel like it's no exception here. And Krennic maybe even better than they. So
better than what? Sorry, you cut out.
Better than how he was handled in Rogue One. He always felt like kind of sniveling.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Whereas he felt like scary in this.
Yeah, I feel like in Rogue One, and I don't know if you did this, but I watched Rogue One like right after I finished Andor, because I felt like I had to. Like, it led right into it. I don't know if you've seen it recently, but
no.
To me, Krennic in Rogue One felt more sniveling and like that, but like that was intentional because they paired him with Tarkin and Vader. Like, of course, out of the three, he's going to be the least powerful. But in Andor, he's so by and far the most powerful person in the room. So it was really cool to see the other side of it, where he is not the weakest guy in the room. He's the strongest guy. And if you think about it, I mean, as far as the rankings of the Imperial officers go, he is so high up in the ranks that it's insane. Right, like
basically only like Tarkin and Vader are above him.
Yeah, and he's like almost on par with Tarkin. Like it's very close. He's trying to fight for funds with Tarkin currently in Rogue One. So Tarkin is for sure above him station wise, but it's close enough that it like he wouldn't call Tarkin boss. You know what I mean? Like he would call him like a coworker or an adversary. You know?
Yeah, it's cool seeing both of those sides and how people are and how, evil's always kind of sniveling when it comes down to it, and they're only big and powerful and they feel like they have control.
Yeah.
You even notice that with like Darth, not to the same extent, but Darth Vader is like subservient to the Emperor, and he comes across much more meek when the Emperor is around.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that's on purpose. It's very it's well done, and
I did like him. He feels that way too, I think, or maybe even consciously he feels that way, but he thinks he's weaker than the Emperor, and he feels weak in those situations, whereas when he's by himself, he doesn't feel weak compared to literally anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, he's the strongest person in the room by far. Yep. And then, it's kind of same thing with Krennic. And I like Krennic in both Rogue One and this. It was just cool to see, like, okay, he can be scary.
Yep.
I don't know why when he did the finger thing, like, that could have easily been really stupid and funny, but it actually freaked me out. When he, like, put his finger on Dedra's head. I was like...
Yeah, no.
It felt just unsettling.
What did you think about the other dude, the other Imperial officer that offed himself at the end there?
The redhead? Oh, no. You're talking about...
the old guy.
He was above Dedra. He was in charge of Imperial security.
Yes.
At least at that level.
Yep.
I thought he was really interesting. I was surprised that he offed himself, but he probably knew what was coming. Must have decided that this was better.
That's just crazy to me. Where I'm like, I don't know. Like, I feel like people screw up in the Empire a lot, and usually they get demoted, but...
I don't know. Vader killed people over, like, nothing.
That's
in Empire Strikes Back.
That's fair. Yeah. No, you're right. He definitely did do that. So maybe he thought that.
I think it makes sense as the progression of the Empire. Maybe it didn't start that way, but as when you cultivate an environment where might makes right, and you have all these like sycophantic, crazy people in charge of things, they're gonna start eating each other because. Yeah, that's what happens. You created the system to operate that way.
Yeah, that's fair. I just thought that was I wasn't expecting it when it happened. I was like, oh. Wow, I thought that he would take his demotion or whatever, but I guess that's not where he was headed.
No, I don't know what. I don't remember if they said what they were going to do to him, but I don't think they did.
I think they just said the Emperor summoned you or something like that.
Oh, that might have been it. And he's like, nope.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know that I need to stand up to Palpatine right now. This is not my time.
It's cool how scary the Emperor can be, and he's not even on screen. I do wish they could have had Ian McDiarmid in this. I understand that tonally maybe it wouldn't as well, but I think the Emperor is scary even when he's being.
And I think Ian McDiarmid's good enough to like make that scene good, like and
the Emperor is scary in Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
and all of them. Sometimes he has like his hammy moments, but he can be scary too.
Yeah. Basically, he's the most scary when he just doesn't talk and he just stares like from that dead gaze, Or
when he's in a room full of people where he has absolute control.
Yeah.
He's very
which horrifying. Is most situations that he's ever been in.
Yeah.
So
I think like if I could change one thing, I would have had. But like I get it. They probably didn't want it to overshadow everything else. Though they had Mon Mothma and other important characters. But the Emperor is like the bad guy, so I get it.
Yeah. How did you feel about the way Luthen went out?
That was surprising, but also like made sense to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate that she went to go and try and save him, and he was like, the jig is up, basically.
With Clea.
So I did like that. I thought it was fitting for him.
I know. I felt very bad for Clea. I did too, because
it's basically her father.
Yeah, exactly. And the person that raised her, and he kind of knew it was the end at the time, where he stayed in Coruscant far past the time that he should have, but like the information that he gave the rebellion, and that's one of the speeches I loved kind of at the end with Cassian and such, where he was talking about how Luthen gave everything, and everyone on the rebellion may not have agreed with his methods or his ideals, or didn't like that he wanted to be outside the bounds of the rebellion, but the information and what he sacrificed to get the rebellion into the place that it is a sacrifice more so than almost anyone there will ever make.
Yep. And it was also interesting because I like that it didn't shy away from the violent aspects of revolution, is that in the road to that, a lot of bad things are done, and sometimes to people that didn't deserve it.
Yeah. And people didn't like him for that, but he is the person that put the rebellion in the position that it's in. Yeah,
it wouldn't have happened without him.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It showed like you need figureheads like Mon Mothma. I mean, she put herself on the line. She was never harming anybody.
Yeah. And I think
you need those. You need the people doing the public-facing stuff. You need people off in the fringes. You even need people like Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
You can maybe make the argument that Saw Gerrera is more unhelpful than he is helpful, but because no one seems to like him.
Yeah, same. I don't like him.
But he was probably necessary too. So it just happens to be that way, and I like that. I like how it showed all sides of it.
Yeah, they showed every aspect of the rebellion, and like the people at the head of the rebellion basically didn't want to look at some people like Luthen who were inspirational to their cause, but because they ethically or morally thought that it wasn't the right thing to do, they pretended like they weren't benefiting from it and weren't taking intel from him and taking different, scenarios and things that helped put them in better positions, and just pretended that, oh, we're doing everything right, even though they're taking information from someone who they completely disagree with his methods.
And it's kind of like, well, we wouldn't have this if I didn't do it this way. And he's probably right.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it complicated and it makes it interesting.
No, I definitely agree. So I thought that was really, really well handled, and I was really glad that they portrayed it that way and then showed how that affected people in his life, mainly Clea, who was the only real person in his life by the time he died. That was well done.
Absolutely. So overall, I did really enjoy that. I understand why someone might prefer season 1, as you get to spend more time with the characters, but I felt like the pacing of this really worked for me.
Yeah.
There are some things that feel like maybe were a consequence of having to cut a lot out, like the assault scene that we discussed earlier. Some of the stuff with Mon Mothma's personal life not coming back around at the end, at least in the way that we see. I think we can thematically understand that significance, but there's maybe some stuff like that could have been fleshed out had they had more time. But I think overall, it was quite good, and I really enjoyed it. And I like this, more Star Wars like this. Definitely don't want to be all like this, but
yeah.
And I think the only episode I did not like was the first one of season 2 was the one on mostly on Yavin. Cassian lands there and he's between two different rebel groups. I don't know, something about that episode just did not work for me. I'm hesitant to speculate on why. I just remember not liking it that much. But other than that,
it was interesting seeing the different rebel groups kind of come together and how Cassian viewed himself as outside the bounds of the rebellion as a unified whole. And they said it multiple times, especially when he kept leaving with his ship. And they're like, have you been cleared? And he's like, fuck that. I don't need no clearance, and just left. And I think it's interesting to see that kind of mindset. And it makes total sense when you've been operating by yourself for essentially your whole life and doing things for Luthen and the rebellion. And you've essentially put your life on the line dozens of times and almost died dozens of times for this cause, and then you have some brand new recruit to the rebellion who was assigned parking duty and is telling you can't park there, and seeing him be like, get the fuck out of here, bro. He's like, what I've done for this thing. So I can see that mindset. And then on the opposite side, you can see the rebellion where they're like, we need to put rules in place, and we're becoming an organization large enough that we have to maintain some sort of structure, otherwise things are going to get out of hand very quickly.
Yeah, and they're right to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe the early stages that messiness is required, but you need to kind of get organized and be in line and in sync with one another and planning, and you can't just have people just doing stuff.
Yeah. So I thought that was done really well, where you could see it from both sides, where he felt like he was being constrained by the rest of the rebellion because he was essentially a founding member of the rebellion, and he thought that everything he's done up to this point has worked, so why stop now? And then,
yep. And he's kind of right. I mean, the other members of the aside from Mon Mothma were kind of they didn't want to admit how important he was.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you guys wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for him.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So you need to get it together. Rules make sense, but he was so necessary to your success.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. But overall, I really like the show, and I see what you mean where you say you don't want every Star Wars property to be like this. And I agree. I think especially for the stuff that involves more of the Force and the general Jedi and the religion part of it, I like the mysticism and the out there nature of the storytelling. I think for a show like this, which is essentially just a espionage thriller, I think they handled it perfectly and exactly as it should have been, just set in a Star Wars world.
Totally agree. And I think it's okay to we can compare things on their own merits, but we don't need to be like, well, this did X, Y, and Z better. And it's they just went for something different, and maybe it achieved what it wanted to better than some other shows did.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that inherently this style is superior.
Correct. Yeah. And you can say that about any art. No style of art 100%. Is better than any other style. It could be executed better than someone else's execution of their intended style, but it's not better by itself. Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this talk. I think that both of us really enjoyed the show, and if you've been listening to the rest of this video, then you kind of have our general thoughts and opinions, but let us know, how did you feel about Andor as a whole, Season 1, Season 2, even Rogue One, and the rest of the Star Wars universe as a whole? I'm Keeks, and I'll talk to you all later.